case of eyesight, he can, if necessary, drive at random, and yet reach a destination of some sort, Selifan succeeded, though powerless to discern a single object, in directing his steeds to a country house near by, and that with such a certainty of instinct that it was not until the shafts had collided with a garden wall, and thereby made it clear that to proceed another pace was impossible, that he stopped. All that Chichikov could discern through the thick veil of pouring rain was something which resembled a verandah. So he dispatched Selifan to search for the entrance gates, and that process would have lasted indefinitely had it not been shortened by the circumstance that, in Russia, the place of a Swiss footman is frequently taken by watch dogs, of which animals a number now proclaimed the traveller's presence so loudly that Chichikov found himself forced to stop his ears. Next a light gleamed in one of the windows and filtered in a thin stream to the garden wall, thus revealing the whereabouts of the entrance gates; whereupon Selifan fell to knocking at the gates until the bolts of the house door were withdrawn, and there issued therefrom a figure clad in a rough cloak. "Who is that knocking? What have you come for?" shouted the hoarse voice of an elderly woman. "We are travellers, good mother," said Chichikov. "Pray allow us to spend the night here." "Out upon you for a pair of gadabouts!" retorted the old woman. "A fine time of night to be arriving! We don't keep an hotel, mind you. This is a lady's residence." "But what are we to do, mother? We have lost our way, and cannot spend the night out of doors in such weather." "No, we cannot. The night is dark and cold," added Selifan. "Hold your tongue, you fool!" exclaimed Chichikov. "Who are you, then?" inquired the old woman. "A dvorianin, good mother." Somehow the word dvorianin seemed to give the old woman food for thought. "Wait a moment," she said, "and I'll tell the mistress." 2 minutes later she returned with a lantern in her hand. The gates were opened, and a light glimmered in a second window. Entering the courtyard, the britchka halted before a moderate sized mansion. The darkness did not permit of very accurate observation being made, but, apparently, the windows only of one half of the building were illuminated, while a quagmire in front of the door reflected the beams from the same. Meanwhile the rain continued to beat sonorously down upon the wooden roof, and could be heard trickling into a water butt; nor for a single moment did the dogs cease to bark with all the strength of their lungs. One of them, throwing up its head, kept venting a howl of such energy and duration that the animal seemed to be howling for a handsome wager; while another, cutting in between the yelpings of the first animal, kept restlessly reiterating, like a postman's bell, the notes of a very young puppy. Finally, an old hound, which appeared to be gifted with a peculiarly robust temperament, kept supplying the part of contrabasso, so that his growls resembled the rumbling of a bass singer when a chorus is in full cry, and the tenors are rising on tiptoe in their efforts to compass a particularly high note, and the whole body of choristers are wagging their heads before approaching a climax, and this contrabasso alone is tucking his bearded chin into his collar and sinking almost to a squatting posture on the floor, in order to produce a note which shall cause the windows to shiver and their panes to crack. Naturally, from a canine chorus of such executants, it might reasonably be inferred that the establishment was one of the utmost respectability. To that, however, our damp cold hero gave not a thought, for all his mind was fixed upon bed. Indeed, the britchka had hardly come to a standstill before he leapt out upon the doorstep, missed his footing, and came within an ace of falling. To meet him there issued a female, younger than the first, but very closely resembling her, and on his being conducted to the parlour, a couple of glances showed him that the room was hung with old striped curtains, and ornamented with pictures of birds and small antique mirrors, the latter set in dark frames which were carved to resemble scrolls of foliage. Behind each mirror was stuck either a letter or an old pack of cards or a stocking, while on the wall hung a clock with a flowered dial. More, however, Chichikov could not discern, for his eyelids were as heavy as though smeared with treacle. Presently the lady of the house herself entered, an elderly woman in a sort of nightcap, hastily put on, and a flannel neck wrap. She belonged to that class of lady landowners who are for ever lamenting failures of the harvest and their losses thereby, to the class who, drooping their heads despondently, are all the while stuffing money into striped purses, which they keep hoarded in the drawers of cupboards. Into one purse they will stuff rouble pieces, into another half roubles, and into a third tchetvertachki, although from their mien you would suppose that the cupboard contained only linen and nightshirts and skeins of wool and the piece of shabby material which is destined, should the old gown become scorched during the baking of holiday cakes and other dainties, or should it fall into pieces of itself, to become converted into a new dress. But the gown never does get burnt or wear out, for the reason that the lady is too careful; wherefore the piece of shabby material reposes in its unmade up condition until the priest advises that it be given to the niece of some widowed sister, together with a quantity of other such rubbish. Chichikov apologised for having disturbed the household with his unexpected arrival. "Not at all, not at all," replied the lady. "But in what dreadful weather God has brought you hither! What wind and what rain! You could not help losing your way. Pray excuse us for being unable to make better preparations for you at this time of night." Suddenly there broke in upon the hostess's word the sound of a strange hissing, a sound so loud that the guest started in alarm, and the more so, seeing that it increased until the room seemed filled with adders. On glancing upwards, however, he recovered his composure, for he perceived the sound to be emanating from the clock, which appeared to be in a mind to strike. To the hissing sound there succeeded a wheezing one, until, putting forth its best efforts, the thing struck two with as much clatter as though some one had been hitting an iron pot with a cudgel. That done, the pendulum returned to its right left oscillation. Chichikov thanked his hostess kindly, and said that he needed nothing, and she must not put herself about. Only for rest was he longing, though also he should like to know whither he had arrived, and whether the distance to the country house of landowner Sobakevitch was anything very great. To this the lady replied that she had never so much as heard the name, since no gentleman of the name resided in the locality. "But at least you are acquainted with landowner Manilov?" continued Chichikov. "No. Who is he?" "Another landed proprietor, madam." "Well, neither have I heard of him. No such landowner lives hereabouts." "Then who are your local landowners?" "Bobrov, Svinin, Kanapatiev, Khaparkin, Treparkin, and Plieshakov." "Are they rich men?" "No, none of them. One of them may own 20 souls, and another 30, but of gentry who own 100 there are none." Chichikov reflected that he had indeed fallen into an aristocratic wilderness. "At all events, is the town far away?" he inquired. "About 60 versts. How sorry I am that I have nothing for you to eat! Should you care to drink some tea?" "I thank you, good mother, but I require nothing beyond a bed." "Well, after such a journey you must indeed be needing rest, so you shall lie upon this sofa. Fetinia, bring a quilt and some pillows and sheets. What weather God has sent us! And what dreadful thunder! Ever since sunset I have had a candle burning before the icon in my bedroom. My God! Why, your back and sides are as muddy as a boar's. However have you managed to get into such a state?" "That I am nothing worse than muddy is indeed fortunate, since, but for the Almighty, I should have had my ribs broken. Dear, dear! To think of all that you must have been through! Had I not better wipe your back?" "I thank you, I thank you, but you need not trouble. Merely be so good as to tell your maid to dry my clothes." "Do you hear that, Fetinia?" said the hostess, turning to a woman who was engaged in dragging in a feather bed, and deluging the room with feathers. "Take this coat and this vest, and after drying them before the fire, just as we used to do for your late master, give them a good rub and fold them up neatly. "Very well, mistress," said Fetinia, spreading some